right, today we're going to talk about a film that's South Korea's official selection for the Academy Awards.
Yeah.
Its decision to leave. Boston Film Critics Society labeled it as the best edited film of the year. It was official selection for Cannes Film Festival. And of course, it's Park Chan-wook.
Yeah, I mean, a movie that I just expected a lot more nudity and violence in, but it's a very reserved Park Chan-wook movie from what I've seen.
Yeah, it seems to be a kind of an offshoot of what he is, but I think it has so well as similarities. We'll talk about it. It's Decision to Leave.
Welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for finding us, and thanks for watching. And for our loyal fans, thank you for continued support of the show. You can follow the show on Twitter and on Instagram. We do have a Patreon. Check that out for some great deals to tell us movies we should review in the future. Both Kyle and I are members of the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. Check out the webpage for critic videos and possibly their top 10s of the year. And today we're talking about I'll give it a leak. It's on my top 10. It's Decision to Leave.
All right. So Detective Jang Hae-jun is investigating the death of a man who plummeted from a mountain cliff. He meets the man's widow, a mysterious woman with secrets of her own. As he finds himself becoming enamored with her, he begins to wonder, could she have had anything to do with her husband's death?
So last year we had Nightmare Alley with Guillermo del Toro, and Kyle was like, where is the monster? Where is the mysticism? Where is the creepy villain? And
Well,
there is none of that.
Update real quick. I have watched the film since, and I really like Nightmare Alley now.
Yeah.
I just needed to get past the fact I didn't know what was going to happen.
And I can see Kyle's like, we're watching Park Chan-wook. Where is the violence?
I need violence. I need nudity.
Yeah.
I need them now. No.
And it almost was dancing around the horror aspect of it. And a lot of people are saying this is an off path for Park Chan-wook because he's very like Old Boy and Sympathy for Lady Vengeance. It's very high violence. And this is not it. This is very much probably his version of Vertigo. If you can get to it. Yeah. So it stars. I'm reading my Park Hae-il. He plays a detective.
Yeah.
And from China, and she's really wonderful in this movie. Tang Wei.
Yeah, who I remember from, she was in Lust Caution, a film with a lot of violence and nudity, from a couple years back, directed by Ang Lee. She's great in that film, and when I saw her here, I was like, oh, I haven't seen her in a while. This will be exciting, and very different character that she plays here than she did there, too. So it's, again, she's a very popular actress where she's from. Hasn't really popped here, but I wish she would.
Right. It was so for previous films. I don't know if you ever seen Handmaid's Tale, which is probably considered his masterpiece.
Oh, The Handmaid?
Handmaid.
We talked about that, yeah.
But also, one of my favorites is Lady Vengeance, but also I recognize it as, when it initially came out, as Sympathy for Lady Vengeance. I really think we should critique that movie. It's part of his trilogy set of violence with Old Boy, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, and Sympathy
I don't know
for
if
Lady
you can call it a trilogy of violence if he's made a ton of other violent films, but
Right. That was his start.
Yeah, this is actually only my third Park Chan-wook film. I saw The Handmaid when we talked about it, of course, and then I watched Stoker a couple months ago, and this would be my third film from the director. So I don't have a lot of insight into his filmmaking techniques. It's just because he's known for Old Boy and he's known for these graphically violent films and some weird octopus
Came
stuff.
out in Korea at the time in the early 2000s.
Yeah. So I was actually surprised at the restraint, but I think that's what actually is one of the film's strengths, is that it is a different, it is a director challenging himself with his narrative. Yeah.
It almost feels like two different directors are making two different movies of this.
Yeah. I felt like he was at that spot where he's pressing on the violence. He's pressing on the sensuality, but he's not breaking through the wall. It's kind of like, I'm going to push it as far as I can. It reminded me actually a lot of In the Mood for Love, a film that is very romantic, very sensual, and yet there's no sex in that movie. Because it's all done in glances, it's all done in looks and discussions, and it's such a beautiful romantic film that doesn't have a lot of romance to it,
Vulture, when I reviewed the person who critiqued it for the Vulture newsprint, called Chan the last post-expressionistic film director. Very much expressionistic. I think it's overly expressionistic. If we critique Park's films, he does style meets emotions, but emotions meets style. It's a lot heavy with not a lot of logic to this movie, but it's very much heavy in emotions and heavy with stylistic approach, and it's saturated with that.
We tend to, in America, have everything has to be realism. Especially in the last couple decades, it seems like we've pushed surrealism out. We've pushed everything out. Everything in your movie has to look real, like it happens right here and today. And that's kind of a problem. Yeah, is that we focus so heavily on every movie has to be realistic or it's not worth talking about.
Like
that,
they show it, you're supposed to see it as it's happening.
Yeah. Whereas it seems like Park Chan-wook is, all of his story is from the emotional grandeur of everything. Like, as people are more emotionally invested in the story, as our characters move forward and get closer connected, things get more heightened all around. The story becomes heightened to match the characters. And we don't really do that in America. And I think that's why this film is, it's kind of Vertigo-esque, because it does have that, like, left-hand veer after a little while.
Yeah. And Park is very much, this is kind of a funny similar thing, but like if you put a drum set to Neil Peart with all different varieties of toms and cymbals, he would try to incorporate all of them in the concert. And Park Chan-wook is very much with like film. He would try to use every editing technique, every camera angle, every lighting technique, let's full zoom in, let's set the camera down, let's do this, let's close up. And he's very much like that. Let's play with all the different tools I have with filmmaking. So the Restrained is the performance, but the film technique is, let's try everything. Let's do a crane shot. Let's do this. Right.
Yeah, I have to wonder how much footage of his is left on the cutting room floor, or like how many different versions of a take he wants. Because I feel like he's a director that probably storyboards, but then afterwards just kind of jives. He just kind of plays jazz music with it.
Yeah.
Because you can even see that too in some of the performances where I could see different ways of delivering the lines, but he's picking these like enigmatic and very very not over the top but heightened emotional line deliveries that give kind of a extra flavor to the narrative. And especially when you have a movie that is a more restrained story that doesn't rely so heavily on the eye-opening moments.
All right, and he danced around like obsession with eyeballs in this.
Oh yeah,
even with the fish, he's poking the dead fish. But then you get this it seems like violence. They're cutting pomegranates.
Yeah.
But it's like the shredding noise and everything is, but they're supposed to be doing activities together for therapy.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's what's really fascinating about the film is like I said, it's him pushing on all these elements, but not actually breaking that membrane, if you will. He's pushing on the sensuality. He's pushing on the violence. We have things like, we have these pictures of really graphic events, but he's not showing the graphic events, Yeah. And coming off of a film we talked about, just a couple of months ago, The Handmaiden, where it was like, that's where it is. Like, it's right there. It's eye-popping in front of you. This is a film that I really respect the fact that he's like challenging himself as a director to go for the insanity and then kind of take a film like this that really focuses in on the restraint.
So there's a great care to every scene. I think, oh my God, every little scene, even the chase scene where they get exhausted because South Korea is not a flat surface, but they're running and then they get up to the hill and they're like, I'll get you. Okay. Yeah. All right, we'll take a break and we keep going. But also the suicide on the cliff, but this is a crane shot. And Park is takes great care and great delicate of every scene. It's almost can be annoying to people how careful this is, how stylized is, even to the stairwell is lit and everything, and then the crash boom. So it's almost bombarded with that, with the style, almost bombarded with style.
Yeah, I would say because he restrains his story, his style is allowed to go manic, if you will. It's a bit all over the place.
Yeah.
And I do mean that in kind of the best ways because, and we'll get to it with the review, but I think he does a great job with this film of convincing you he's not going to do exactly what you know he's going to do.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Perfect timing. So up next is our review of Decision to Leave. Okay, so very much, a lot of people when they critique this talk about Vertigo because it is a detective getting obsessed with murder suspect and she's dangerous, but also he understands it's intoxifying, but he doesn't know if she's reciprocating to the very end. And it's a very tragic ending to this movie, but I do like how it doesn't do what you want it to do throughout the whole time. It feels like three different movies all at once. I think that's discombobulating. I understand people's harsh review of it. It seems like he's discombobulated, disjointed feels all the times. But that's his intent most of the time throughout the whole movies.
Well, and that goes back to, again, before I'd seen this movie, if you gave me like a few options, like do you think the movie's going to do this or it's going to do this, I would pick correctly. It does do pretty much exactly what you would expect a movie like this to do. But Park Chan-wook's ability to direct us and convince us as viewers that he's not going to do exactly what you know he's going to do. You know, if he's like, if you put a knife on the table and you're like, oh, someone's going to get stabbed with that knife, he's going to be like, no, they're not, no, they're not, no, they're not. And then 30 minutes later, someone gets stabbed with that knife. Exactly what's going to happen. But he does a great job, especially with that finale where I was like, oh, he's going to do A with this. Oh, that's fantastic. Great. 10 minutes pass. No, he's just doing B. Oh, crap. Like, and I think that's what was most interesting to me was that I was never sure what was going to happen because of the directing, not because of the story.
Right, because in fact he meets up with her in that town again.
Yeah.
And she has another partner, and you see the tension, and he shoots that very, like, he shoots the feet, but also the reactions. You get the reactions of her restraint. Very nice to meet you, detective. Right? Yeah. Very nice to meet you. I'm the new guy. Oh yeah. But then we see that he gets deceased, and like, oh, this is starting all over again.
Yeah. It actually has a lot more in common with Nightmare Alley in terms of its structure, even where the fact that the film is almost two halves of two different movies.
Yeah.
And you get to the end of A part, and A part kind of works on its own little like short film aspect, and then you could watch B as its own little short film, or you can jumble the two together, and it does feel like when the film starts back up again, I was like, oh, we're going somewhere else. Like again, like it kind of catches you off guard when you should assume that this is going to happen again. It's not like it's shocking that we're going through the same narrative twice, but then again, he does a great job of convincing you're not going to do that.
And I think this is going to get a nomination for Best Editing because the careful smoothness of the editing for a complexity of a kind of a film. But also you get like the reshot shooting of, all right, this is how it happened. And then you get it filmed like she did this and this and this and all the hypotheticals.
Yeah.
And so you have to, when you shoot that, then you have to like, all right, we got to shoot the hypothetical. We're at the location. So that's a hell of a job to do that technically.
Yeah.
But then you film it as a backstory, like a possible, like he's solving the crime. But I understand, directing, it's one of the best edited films in a long time for me.
It holds its own pretty nicely from when you hear about a movie being 220, you're like, and it's just it's a classic detective story, romance, noir is aspects of it.
Very much so, yeah.
Detective in a lot of ways. So you're like, oh, do you need 2.5 hours for it? But I don't really know that I felt there was a lag at all.
No.
And anytime the film felt like it was kind of slowing down story-wise, something would happen almost immediately after you have that thought that would ratchet the tension up a little bit and move us emotionally in a new direction.
He does that with characters, too.
Yeah.
Well, you have another character that's almost like a little bit animated to jump up, okay, this story is kind of lagging. Let's bring another character that's a little more animated. Like, I'm talking about the female assistant detective.
Oh, yeah.
She comes at the right time where we're kind of low with the characters, and then she comes in and pops up and let's go get him. And then you got the crusty detective. You're on this case too long, and shouts, and then the kind of dancing around the cliches a little bit because he is an insomniac detective.
Yeah, he
actually is pretty good at what he does, but then he also has this marriage that's kind of on the back end.
It's almost like this is a classic trope of detectives. They're so good at their job at figuring out the mystery that they can't see the crime about to happen at home. They can't see that their spouse is going to
mechanic can't fix his own car.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't have time to fix his own car, but he's doing other people's.
Yeah, that's fair. And again, like I'm married to a pharmacist, and I'll tell you that pharmacists are the worst patients. But it's true. It's all about that stuff. But yeah, I think what's funny to me is that I was so engaged with the two sidekick detective characters. The A story had that male guy who was kind of didn't want to do the work. He was a bit slummy, a bit scummy, a bit rude.
Right, it's very nice contrast.
And then the second assistant detective, the female one you mentioned, who was just like, I'm not really like, she wasn't really catching the things he was catching, but she was very like excited about, well, let's go get him. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And I found that kind of funny was that there are two different sides of the coin and how they both influence him. And even how when we go back to Tangwei as Seo-rei, she as a character is kind of like influencing them in two different ways.
Exactly.
And it's very captivating.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I appreciate every shot angle of this. It's fantastic filmmaking. I mean, it's really, he really loves to bombard you with style and saturation. Watch this movie. It's a lot to digest. It's almost going to a buffet.
Yeah.
And eating like 5 plates.
Yeah, and that's why I don't know if it's a movie I'm going to, it's not a home video yet, but it's not like a movie I'm going to grab off the shelf often because it's a lot. There's a lot in there. and it is a movie that requires attention, not just because of the subtitles, but requires attention.
Can't be
to
like,
it.
even though you think, oh, this is a downtime, check your phone, but that's
Absolutely
the quiet
not.
time is when you get the interactions, that subtleties. That
What is the
play.
song? The quiet time is the right time, like that. So, the film is on the shortlist for Best International Feature. I think it'll get up for that.
Yes,
I
exactly.
don't honestly think the film will get any other noms. That's not to say I don't think the film is worthy of noms. I just think the conversation about it is not really happening. And I will say this: I like that it's available in America. I think Tubi has some, or Mubi has some really, really great movies on there. I think Mubi is a terribly laid out service. I think the app is not accessible. I think a lot of people don't even know about it. So I do think the film is not going to get that lift. Yeah.
You need to catch up because there's other movies that we would like to see that should be available on there.
Yeah. It's kind of that whole thing where we talked about HBO Max at the beginning of the year when it was kind of like real kicking into high gear. It wasn't a very good app at the time. And it was tough to want to, like, great content on there, not a great app service. And then you kind of have like Peacock, which doesn't have as much content, but it's got a great app service. And it's like Mubi has to catch up with making an accessible app because it was infuriating trying to find stuff to watch on there. So the film is available now on Mubi. If you haven't had a chance to see it, go get that free trial like we did and watch it.
And once again, I watched this twice, and it's a lot to digest.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there, turn off my phone and watching it, and it's like it's still missing things that I probably didn't catch the second time. I think if I go back to a third time, I'll critique it differently.
Well, I think that part of that comes down to when you watch a film that's different culturally, there are those things that people who live in that culture will understand that we don't as viewers, that you might get a second time. And that's why, I probably do the most, like, special feature watching when it comes to foreign films, just because there are things that I am not getting. There's a commentary track that will help me out here, because there's things that I will find more exciting when I learn them.
The whole use of their phones, part of the culture, and how it plays. It's not as dull like I'm texting and you show the camera texting, but it's also presented very expressionistically.
Yeah.
It's on the screen and it's talked out or something like that. Yeah.
I'm perfectly happy with seeing phones in movies if it's aesthetically pleasing on film and if it fits the narrative. Because so often, I think a lot of times we see now with some like rom-coms and stuff, we tend to get that texting back and forth kind of thing, and I don't feel like it's really natural. Part of that is because I didn't meet my spouse on an app. So, maybe I'm just seeing it differently. But I like the use of phones in the film.
Yeah. And so, and so one of them is still on my top 10 list, Decision to Leave. What do you think?
Just got bumped off mine, just
Okay.
barely. I've got so many honorable mentions. I think last week when you were asking me about it, you said, "What's your top 10?" And my top 10 list had 45 movies on it. And I was like, "Okay, I got to whittle some off here." So
It's just it's a bombardment.
yeah, this is a year where like my top 10 could have been 50, and I don't have a ton of films that I generally hated.
If we did exclusively top 10 horror movies, we would have
I could have a great top 10
right,
if no other movies came out but horror movies.
and we would fight about it too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yours is at 3, mine's at 2. No,
Yeah.
no, not going to break my top 10, but I can see why it has worked so exceeding well for other people. And when I read the reviews, I'm like, yeah, I see your take as well, and that makes me want to watch the film again. So
I do like Park's films, and he's siphoning Vertigo as well as being a noir. You do all three of that, I'm going to love it.
yeah, as I'm watching this movie, sometimes we watch movies for our show, and I'm thinking the whole time, like, yeah, Nick's going to love this.
Yeah, sometimes it's just that little hook, and I'll take it.
Yeah, you're just like, oh, okay, I will. All right.
So I'm going to recommend it, Decision to Leave.
Yeah, definitely check it out. Get that free trial of Mubi, and then watch as many movies as you can in a week. And hopefully they'll fix that terrible app service. But check out the movie anyway, because it's worth checking out. And then let us know your thoughts down below. I think it's going to be on Mubi for a while. They got the streaming rights for it for a good chunk of time.
And I'm going to say, if you like noirs, like murder mysteries, and that vertical, very dreamy quality, you have to watch it twice. Because you're going to...
It does work a little bit better on the second viewing. Again, even though you know where it's going on the first viewing. Because you have your plot assured for you by the end of that first viewing, it works better on the second. Yeah. So let us know your thoughts on the film, and let us know. Park Chan-wook has done a lot of films, so give us your favorite, and maybe we'll pick one of those for a future episode.
Vengeance.
I still haven't seen Old Boy. Let us know your thoughts down below, and definitely
remake?
none of them.
You haven't seen the remake yet?
No.
Good.
Why would I watch the?
Why would you watch the movie? Yeah.
Spike Lee's got other joints. Make sure to like and subscribe to the video. We'd love to have you join the team if you check out the
Exactly.
Patreon link down below.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for joining us. You can find my film reviews over at goatfilmreviews.com.
You can find my show, the St. Paul Filmcast, anywhere you find podcasts.
You can?
Yes.
Make a decision to watch our show.